incident was about to take place that would shake the foundations of the civilized world.
It is time to open your mind. Time to discover your divine self as we navigate this holographic matrix together. Strap in, cosmic family, as we slide through this wormhole of cosmic information together in search of the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
It's time to go inside the matrix. With your host, Jimmy Brent.
All right, everybody, welcome to Inside the Matrix. We're so happy to have you here today. Whether you're listening live with us or listening to archive, we're always appreciative of our audience. And once again, before we get started, I always like to recognize those who are supporting our show financially and helping us out. We really appreciate your assistance in keeping this show on the air, and particularly our good friend, the Florida chick. My guest today is from London, the UK. Her name is Seven Starseed. Seven is a music producer, musician, writer, author, and show concept creator. Her Dancing with the Stars television show concept was stolen from her by major networks. She took them to court and won her case. But as with many such cases against the rich and powerful, she has not been able to collect the judgments that she was awarded. Seven is a dedicated truther and has appeared on many of the best internet shows that promote truth and freedom. She is a strong and brilliant voice for humanity against the tyranny we are experiencing worldwide, as well as the UK where she resides. So Seven, welcome to the show.
Greetings, and thank you for having me, Jimmy. Wow, that's an amazing introduction. Thank you so much.
Well, it's a pleasure having you here. I've been listening to many of the shows that you've been on, you know, with Alfred and with Rima and many others for quite a while. And so I was really excited to have you on the show so that you can share with us, you know, your experience and what you're doing and all that. So before we get started, I always ask our new guests to share with us kind of your background, you know, where you grew up, what your family life was like, you know, how you got from, you know, birth to where you are now, sort of in a nutshell. And you can share as much or as little as you like, but give our audience a feel for you.
Okay. That's 55 years in comprised in a minute or so.
No, you have more than that.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I'm born in the UK. I come from a Caribbean family background. I would say probably quite a typical Caribbean family, although I'm very fortunate to have had I believe my eldest brother was what people now refer to as an ascended master.
Wow.
He at the very, very young age, I mean, there was 7 children to my mother and father, but 4 of them died before I arrived.
Oh my God.
So I'm the 7th child. So I had a very unique upbringing in the sense that my brother had very vast knowledge. He definitely was a starseed. He was someone that was extremely gifted in so many ways. He was a Jedi. He was a complete genii. Very humble, very, very humble person. Very learned. He was the type of person that you could ask him any question, any word that came out of the dictionary, and he would tell you the etymology of the word, where the people migrated that spoke that language. I mean, he was so learned.
That's amazing.
And me being the 7th child of after 4 children had passed, some were stillborn. I think my mother had twins before I arrived, and they were stillborn. There was a number of situations of how, you know, these my siblings passed before they arrived, if you like. Mm-hmm. And so there was a kind of strange legacy around my birth. You know, everybody was very watchful over me. I was the only female as well. apparently I was the size of a bag of sugar.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of how I am 7, because my brother used to study someone called Lobsang Rampa. I don't know if you know who that is.
Mm-mm.
Do you know who that is?
No, I haven't heard that.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, he was a very interesting, an interesting sort of folk law kind of character. And it was based around Tibet.
Okay.
And the whole Tibetan philosophy of Lamaism and the whole culture in Tibet. This particular person called Lobsang Rampa, he incarnated and carnated over a series of lifetimes. And everybody knew when he would be reborn, because of the way the trees would bloom outside a particular house.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's, you know, I mean, it's a really interesting, if anybody ever gets the opportunity to check out the story of Lobsang Rampa, that kind of, in a way, it was part of my foundations. And there is a Tibetan philosophy. I think there's quite a lot of philosophies actually to do with the 7th child, because they say that the 7th child is, I suppose, breaks legacies and traditions, not necessarily traditions, but, you know, sometimes you have ancestral things that happen in families, and the 7th child is the generation to break the karma, if it's a negative karma, for instance.
Right.
And I think it's in a lot of native indigenous tribes have that about the 7th child. It's quite well known anyway worldwide. And so I was brought up, you know, sort of learning about this. In Tibetan philosophy, for instance, at the age of 7, the child would be taken away from the family and be taught metaphysical and spiritual principles, and whereby, you know, but not every child, it would be specific children that they knew there was some kind of calling on their life, if you like.
Right.
And I think my family probably realized in the way that I arrived into the family, being the one that survived, and I was so small and all that stuff. I think there was maybe a little bit of attention on me in that sense, in a spiritual sense. And so certainly as I grew up, now that I look back, I realized that I was different, you know, in terms of very psychic. Because my brother, the same brother I mentioned, he was incredibly psychic, and so was I. So I had this telepathic relationship with him. He was also very ill from all of his life. He was very, very ill. He was a very poorly child. And whenever he would come down and with a serious, because sometimes he would be on the verge of a heart attack, and I would find him. So I would be out, I'd go to school, or I'd be out with my friends or doing whatever I was doing. And if I was away from him, I could hear him calling me. I could just hear him calling my name, you know, and I'd find him, and I called the ambulance, and I saved his life maybe 9 or so times.
That's amazing.
And, yeah, there is a really interesting journey between me and this brother, and it actually forms the foundations of the position I find myself in today. He died in 1990, and the circumstances around his death were definitely supernatural. Nothing that I'd ever, even today, all those years later, I'm trying to piece together to understand what actually happened the day that he died. And I say that because I'll give you a little bit of this scenario.
Okay.
if
Sure.
you don't mind. I
No,
know that I'm supposed
go
to be
ahead.
talking about my who I am, but I guess this is part of my foundations, and it
Oh, yeah.
forms a massive part of why I am doing what I'm doing today and what has happened to me since. Now, my brother, because he had deep spiritual understandings, he studied, Sanskrit. He studied Lamaism, which is a Tibetan philosophy. He studied Islam. He studied the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, he studied all religious systems.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was brought up studying religious systems and having an insight into the different ways that people worshipped and the different ways of people connected to the divine. This was like my foundations from very, very young. And also I was a musician. I taught myself how to play guitar. It's kind of maybe by accident, I don't know, but my brothers I had two brothers, and my other brother was very musical. In fact, my household was very musical. We always had music on. I was brought up in the 70s.
Nice.
So James Brown, Stevie Wonder, David Bowie. I mean, we had an eclectic household of music, books,
Oh, yeah.
and spiritual literature. And so my formative years was kind of a cocktail between me studying music on my own, because somebody left a broken guitar. Well, it wasn't broken, it just had one string, and it was left. They left. My brother had this friend, and he used to come around and play like Elvis Presley songs, and he'd play all this stuff on this guitar, and I was mesmerized. And then one day he just left it, and it stayed there for months.
Oh, wow.
And it just had one string, and I thought, God, nobody wants it, So I took it and brought it in my room, and I started learning how to play the songs on the radio. I just picked out the notes, and that's how I became a musician.
Oh, wow.
And,
That's really neat.
And so anything from everything, whatever they played on the radio, the Carpenters, Funkadelic, I just played everything that I could. And then by the time I got to my teens, I started people started asking me if I wanted a record deal. And I was like a little bit concerned, because I knew lots of stories from the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that there was a lot of drugs and a lot of things that happened. So I declined record deals at the time. And because I declined record deals, I got publicity in a way. People asked me, if I would appear in different magazines, because I also used to make my own clothes, and I looked a little bit weird, I guess. I looked different from other people. I come from a family that's very creative, lots of professors, lots of very learned, scholarly-like people. And so there was a lot of music. I made my own clothes because I had older brothers, and I used to get their hand-me-downs.
And that's not good for a young lady.
Yeah. And so I would sort of cut them up and turn them into like these outfits.
There you go.
And I went, going down the street with my guitar wearing these wacky outfits. Got me attention, I guess. And so I got like people's. I was very shy. I was very painfully shy. So I used to most of the time go to the park to play the guitar and to sing and write these songs. I'd write them in my room, and then I would go to the park to sing. And then I got overheard. Somebody heard me playing, and he said, "Wow, you play really good." And I was so embarrassed. Oh my God, I was so embarrassed. And, it's funny because it's weird with me, because on one level I'm really shy, and on the other level I'm really extremely outgoing. It's a
I
weird
think
thing.
I think many of us artists are like that.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I
Because
know
I
exactly what you're saying because I'm sort of a loner, quiet type, but then you get me on a stage and it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it's weird because I think maybe because it was my own music and my own creation, also because I'm self-taught. I never had a lesson. So I didn't know if I was any good. It just felt good. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It
Sure.
felt good to express myself and it was compelling for me. But on the other level, I used to dance as well because in London, there used to be this place called Crackers. There was two places, in fact, that was really big in the 70s. One was a place called Gossips in an area called Soho of London, and kids used to like skip school at lunchtime to go and dance in this place, and I was one of those kids.
All
So
right.
yeah, I used to go and dance in this place, and I used to win competitions. So I was a combination of doing my dance, writing music, songs and stuff. And as I got older, I got more serious about my music. And yeah, so that was basically what I wanted to do. But I felt like I needed to make music that had, could convey a message.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't for me, it wasn't just about playing music. I felt like there was a calling on my life because I was the seventh child and there was all this legacy attached and associated to me. So I was using my music as a form of ministry, if you like, at the
Right.
time. And so I got to the point where eventually I broke out of my shyness because enough people heard me and they liked what I was doing. And so I used to go around with my guitar and I used to go into corporations and sing and walk out.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a bit weird, but I can't even sort of recall. I remember doing it, but I mean, the life that I live now is so different. It's like 1,000 moons ago,
I
But
hear
yeah, I
you.
used to actually, I would go to I would pick a corporation and I would go to the security guard and say, who works here? And they would say, oh, this person works on that floor, that person works on that floor. And I would say, can I go and see him? And they would say, okay. And they call him up and say, there's a lady here. She wants to come and talk to you. And I would go with my guitar and I would play a song and then walk out.
Wow.
Yeah, there's actually, I heard a story. I don't know if this is true, but one of the people that I actually went into his offices and did that, I met many years later. And I was it was a woman's, like an International Women's Day, one of these type of kind of events, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And somebody invited me to go along, so I went along. And I met this guy and he said, I know you. And I said, yeah, how come? And he said, you came in my office and you played a song. And in that situation, that was actually a record label that I went into. I didn't want a record deal. I just wanted to go in and play and give the message with my music because my music was my ministry, right?
Right.
So, yeah, he said that he signed PJ Harvey because of me, which is kind of cool because she's iconic now. I don't know if you know who she is, but
I've heard the name, yeah.
Yeah, she's kind of an indie artist and she's very alternative. Not that my music was anything like hers. I was doing a completely different thing, but he said that he was looking for me for a long time to give me a record deal.
Oh,
He
my.
couldn't find me, and so then he came across her and gave her the record deal. And yeah, so she's sort of like an indie artist, British indie artist, but she's nothing like me musically. Let me just get that straight. We're very, very different musically speaking.
Okay.
But yeah, so I had a few sort of magazines sort of interview me, and Yeah, so that basically was my foundations, and then my brother died at the age of 30, and that sort of changed the course of my life and led me to the point where I am today. Now, I think probably after the break I can tell you a little bit about that story, and because it's intense, it's really interesting on so many different levels. And, I would really like to share a little bit about what happened, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. And I love hearing your stories, and I know our audience does too. And I'm sure they're out there riveted, waiting for the next part, because
Right.
it is very interesting. And I know that when we talked earlier, you had mentioned some of the artists that you actually performed with, and I know Seven is very humble in what she does, but she's done some pretty amazing performances with people before, and we definitely want to get into that too. And so, were you performing full time when at that young age, after you were kind of going around to these different offices and trying to get out there a bit? Were you playing on the side? What were you doing at that time?
Right. Well, at that time, my brother was very poorly. So I was his next of kin, even though I'm the youngest child.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of looked after him as well as played music, and was studying spiritual systems, like I explained.
Mm-hmm.
So I did manage to, as I got older, I became more recognized, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you go into, I know myself, when I was really trying to break in and meet people in music, I would just go to different clubs and ask to sit in, and see if I could get up on the stage and do my thing and, get to know people. Did you ever do any of that?
Yeah. I played around London, different places, different venues. There was a really cool music scene in London at that time, 80s, 90s, good club scene as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I played a lot of places, but eventually I became a session musician, and I worked with other people. I played with Robert Palmer. There is a video on YouTube. It's Robert Palmer, Respect Yourself. If you type that in, you'll see me playing guitar with Robert Palmer on a video. Yeah, and so I did, the usual Top of the Pops, and I worked with other people. And so, that was kind of, I know we've only got 60 seconds left. So
so
I'm kind of holding back a little bit because I don't.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I want to pick that up and talk a little bit more about, who you performed with and all that kind of stuff, because it's fascinating. And especially to me, I love Robert Palmer. I sing a couple of his songs still to this day. So,
wow,
and he was huge in the U.S. as well. I'm sure you know.
Right. Yeah.
As a lot of UK artists, and we kind of switched back and forth across the ocean, right? Many of the artists went over there and came here. Anyway, you're listening to Inside the Matrix with our special guest, Seven, the Starseed, our good friend. And we're going to take a short pause right here. So stick around with us. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
You're listening to Inside the Matrix. Inside the Matrix with Jimmy Brent.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Inside the Matrix. We're so happy to have you here with us. And our special guest today, Seven, she was telling us about performing with some big artists as a studio musician, and probably, were you performing live as well, Seven, with them, or mostly in the studio?
It was mostly studio, but I performed live all the time. At the same time I was running my own career. So there was a big music scene in London, actually. Some of the most amazing musicians were in London, used to hang around like places like, there's an area called Covent Garden. Mm-hmm. And some phenomenal people used to play in that area. So, I kind of knew a lot of musicians, amazing musicians. And at the same time, I as I was performing myself, I sessioned from time to time with other big artists. I was saying you can go onto YouTube, and if you type in Respect Yourself with Robert Palmer, there's a video. You'll see me. I'm wearing a yellow suit, and I think I'm playing my it's a Les Paul double cutaway.
Nice.
Electric guitar. If you go on there, you'll see me on there. But yeah, so my formative years was really music, being creative. It was kind of a really eclectic community that I lived in. Lots of dancers, artists, musicians, painters, writers. So it was just the way of life. I wasn't unusual by any stretch of the imagination. Everybody was like that, you know. Everybody was creative, and the musicians that played on the block, I mean, some of them would give Hendrix a run for his money. Do you know what I mean? So,
Sure.
And people like Prince, you know, who we love and respect as
Yep.
musicians, but there were some serious people. So you had to know your chops. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't
Absolutely. Yep.
It wasn't just people took it seriously, you know, they took it seriously. And so yeah, that was kind of my formative years. And I used to also, because I made my own clothes, I ended up styling sometimes, and yeah, I did a few things. And so I did end up in a few magazines and books and what have you. And as time went on, and my brother became more and more sick until the day that he died. And he died under really supernatural circumstances. I went to this thing called Mind, Body and Spirit Festival. It's something that happens annually in the UK, probably happens in different parts of the world. They must probably have a American equivalent to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to one, and I can't remember the year. It must have been, maybe it was 1989 or something like that. Anyway, I went to this with a very good friend of mine at the time, and they were holding these I don't know what you would call them, but there were people from different parts of the world who would do healing sessions, remote healing sessions. So it was a stage basically with maybe about 50, between 50 and 100 different people standing on the stage, all wearing white coats, and they were doing remote healing. And I was amazed. And so I kind of I remember they said if you wanted to get remote healing for somebody, that you could fill out a slip and give the person's name. So I gave my brother's name because my brother was so sick, right?
Sure.
And I left there and I completely forgot about it. And then my brother kept saying to me, I keep getting this dream, this really weird dream that Jesus is in an office and he's sorting out everything for you. I was like, that's a weird dream, you know. And like for weeks, he was telling me about the same dream. So then I get this card through the post, and it says, the remote healing for your brother has been completed. Then I realized, oh my gosh, the dream was because all of these people were praying for him at the same time. And it was a confirmation for me, because people don't realize the power of prayer. You know, the power of being able to sync your intention, the power of the intention of your, how could I say, your divine petition. If everybody tunes in to the right vibration, the same vibration, I should say, for an intention and a purpose, that message is received. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that that message is received. The powers that we have as spiritual beings outside of all of this matrix is phenomenal. It's just that we're not even aware of it. And most of us are not using it. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, and I agree with that totally. That the power of prayer, it's a concentrated. I mean, you can I sort of think of it as a concentrated thought with emotion infused into it, and that intensity, the more intensity that you can put into it, the stronger it is. And then, we have been so dumbed down as a, population of humans by, I don't know what they are out there. There's a lot of discussion about who controls the world and why, but they spend a lot of time and effort trying to keep us distracted and trying to keep us from doing any of that. Because if we ever realized our power as human beings, we could end the tyranny of the world overnight.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. But we're not there. And because people are so distracted, they've been mind controlled and socially engineered and you name it, to keep them off of that and to keep them away from really grasping the idea that they are powerful beings and that our thoughts and our expressions carry ripples of energy out into the collective consciousness.
That's right.
As we, if we ever come together collectively and decide we want to do something, it will absolutely happen and there will be no stopping it.
That's right.
I feel like that's really what we're up against right now in a big way, because they've amped up the game this year. And I think it's probably in response to a growing number of people becoming aware and conscious that weren't before. So they feel like they got to step up the game and try and squash us down and take more control in order to, stave that off and stop it. But it's a fascinating thing. It's the life game, the virtual reality of this realm is amazing. It's the ultimate virtual reality game, right? And we have so much ability that we don't know about. And that is, part of why we're in the situation we're in.
That's right. And I think we also have so much support from the forces in terms of the alignments. If we understand how astrology works, and some of the alignments that are taking place at the moment are, there are planetary positions, for instance, Uranus in Taurus, Uranus being the planet of technology, systems, and so many things to do with change, revolution. It really is the planet of the awakening and revolution, I would say. Mm-hmm. And it is positioned in the planet of Taurus, and Taurus rules structures, spiritual systems, etc. So if you have a planet dealing with revolution above a planet that deals with social structures, systems, monetary systems, we know that there is going to be nothing that they can do to stop what is coming. They've had their reign and their time is over. Let's just put it that way for now. But, so just coming back to my brother, I remember my brother, that was a confirmation when my brother told me, because he told me about the dream before I even remembered that I got these people to pray.
Oh.
And he was receiving the information in his dreams. He couldn't understand why he was getting the dreams he was getting. But obviously, if you take people meditating all around the world and putting that energy, directing that energy to you, it definitely will have an impact on the recipient. Now, as I told you, when my brother was, as I was growing up, I recall finding my brother on numerous occasions. There were many, many occasions whereby, even as I got older, I remember cooking one day in my kitchen, and then all of a sudden I would just hear my brother calling me, and I would stop and I would literally run because I just knew he was in danger. And that was my relationship. Besides all this supernatural stuff, we had this thing happening very often. And the day that he actually passed was something really amazing. I mean, I say it's amazing, but it is a testament that this is not all that there is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when you tune in on levels to other forms of consciousness, things happen that just cannot be explained. On the day that my brother died, I was standing with him in the kitchen, in my kitchen, and he handed me a book about Lobsang Rampar's death. As I explained earlier, there is a series of books about this, the life and times of this character called Lobsang Rampar, him incarnating and leaving the planet and arriving again in another body, etc. Now, this particular book that my brother handed to me in my kitchen was about Lobsang Rampar's death. And as he handed me this book, a mirror that was placed on the kitchen windowsill, literally without anybody touching it, and we must have been about, let's say, about 20 feet away from this book. Away from this window. And there was a mirror that was just, it was like a mirror tile that was just leaned up on the windowsill. And this mirror leapt into the air and traveled this 20 feet and smashed in front of my brother, literally.
Oh my gosh.
It was just the most bizarre thing I'd ever encountered. As he handed me this book, this mirror supernaturally somehow traveled across to him and smashed in front of him. This glass all over.
What do you think the meaning of that was?
I don't know. I've spent the last, 20 years or so trying to discover what it is. Anyway, he handed me this book, which was about Lobsang Rampar's death. And we looked at the mirror. The hairs on my arm were standing, and we kind of were frozen. And we were like, what was that?
Yeah.
I said, I don't know. And we just froze, you know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I put a black bin liner over it because I didn't want to touch it. I was just like so spooked out about it. He left and said to me that he would be back. Anyway, in the course of the evening, I was a bit pissed off at the time with somebody. I had an argument with someone, and so I went to bed, and I knew that my brother was supposed to come back, but I didn't. I was so upset I didn't tune in. Then I heard my brother calling me, psychically calling me.
Right.
But I didn't answer. I was like, leave me alone, Dan. I can't. I'm upset. Anyway, maybe that might have been about between 11, 12, 1 into the morning. By about 8 in the morning, my doorbell is going. I'm on the 3rd floor, so I go to the window and I see 2 police officers outside, and I'm like, what are the police doing at my door? Right. I was like, whoa, what's going on? Anyway, eventually I opened the window and I said, can I help you? And they asked me if I am me, and I said, yeah. They said, can you come down? And I was like, why? And they were like, can you come down, please? And basically, they had my brother's clothes in a bag, and they said he was dead. And I was like, oh, wow. You got to be kidding. And they said, because I was the next of kin, right? So I had to alert all my family. Anyway, so that kind of was the foundations of what led me to this point, because of the way my brother died and everything, I really wanted to create something that would help people with health and revolutionize the way that we deal with health and fitness within the entertainment industry. So I set about to put together a health and fitness multimedia platform, which is what I done. And I spent a long time in research. I went to hospitals and spoke to cancer patients, stroke victims. I used to look after a couple of stroke victims and cancer patients, just voluntarily. They just happened to be people that lived in the building that I lived in. And so I kind of would take them out and stuff. In 2 different neighborhoods. I moved from one neighborhood to another, and in the first neighborhood I was in, there was a lady that was sick and I looked after her. Then I moved into another area and there was somebody else. They both had the same name, both these women, funny enough.
Wow.
So basically I spent a while doing that. And at the time I was researching schedules for mainstream television to see whether or not there was anything like I was embarking on doing, which was to take everything that I did, dance and fitness and whatever, and put it together to create something that would resonate with the average people, people that were at home, that were suffering from illness in one way or another. And it was all inspired by what had happened to my brother, because he was such a giant, in my eyes. He was the most beautiful person. And so I had this conviction to do this thing. And so I put all these documents together, all this research, and, I then contacted the Law Society when I had completed it. And I got all the documents bound and really nicely put together. And then I set about to have meetings with lawyers to trade what I had done, what I put together. And so the Law Society gave me the name based on jurisdiction, in other words, where I lived, of a law firm. And they were called Russells. And I actually called them up and told them that, excuse me, that I wanted an appointment to discuss the licensing of my work. Wait a minute, I've got a frog in my throat. Wait a minute.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, just drink some water. Sorry about that.
Was that the start of your show concepts?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I go to see Christopher Gossage in this law firm called Russells, which is based in central London. It's called, I think it's West 1, in a place called Regent Street. And I would say if anybody is looking for a lawyer, do not go there. I had no idea what I was walking into. At the time, I probably was green. I was already in the entertainment industry, and my motives to put this together was based upon my insight that through my brother dying so young, he was only 30 years old, as I told you, and looking after all of these people, and going to hospitals and talking to doctors, I just got an insight that entertainment was a tool that could be used to facilitate inspiration to become well,
Sure.
on all levels. So I organized this meeting. I go and see this guy called Christopher Gossage, who perceives me as a lot younger because I look a lot younger than I am. And this was 17 years ago. This was in 2003. And so I walked into his office with all these documents, and I got him to sign 2 confidentiality documents, non-disclosure agreements, basically.
Right.
And because I knew in the same way that somebody who writes a hit song knew what I had done would be well received. I just knew because it was done with so much love for my brother that I just knew the impact would hit, it would be successful. So anyway, I go to this lawyer, and then he signs these confidentiality, and he's pacing the room like, oh my God, did you do this? Oh my God, oh my God. And, he's tripping by this time. I'm just sitting watching this guy like pacing the room, flicking through my documents.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I need to start kind of maybe emailing this man after this, so that there's a record of everything that's discussed, because my instincts were sharp. I'd already been in the entertainment industry, and I know that it's corrupt, right?
So you're already thinking this guy might steal your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's tripping. He's reeling off all these companies. We could go to Endemol, we could go to Celador, we could go to this company. He was just tripping with my documents in his hand, pacing the room fast. And he was like, we can licensing here. He's like, brainstorming while I'm just sitting there. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, cut a long story short, that's exactly what I did. I from that point onwards, I emailed him, as the negotiations for my work started to be discussed. I said I'm not going to communicate by phone with him. I'm only going to talk to him via email, and that's.
So you have a record, yeah.
Yes, I had a record. I also had the paper trail because, as I said, I had been researching this thing for a long time. After my brother died in 1990, I set upon the whole quest to see how to do it. I didn't just launch into doing it. I actually took a long time in pre-production, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of paperwork as far as a paper trail. And so I know that we're going to take a break now. But yeah, so what happened after that is unbelievable. Basically, I walked into a mafia cartel, an organized crime cartel. I had no idea that I had walked into this. And they basically set up a whole situation to literally murder me for my intellectual property. So
my God.
That's the story that I'm going to take you through after the break.
Yeah, we can't wait to hear that one. And, I've heard similar things before, and I'll throw something out at you when we get back from the break. But anyway, you're listening to Inside the Matrix with Seven, our special guest. We're going to take a short pause right here. So we want everybody to stick around with us. Feel free to pop a question in the chat if you have one, or give us a call, whatever you'd like to do. We'll be back in just a little bit. Stick around. Okay, welcome back, everybody, to Inside the Matrix with our special guest, Seven. Before the break, Seven was telling us her story about her encounter with an attorney that she was hoping to secure her material with, and then Seven, pick it up from there.
Yeah, okay. Welcome back, everybody. A shout out to all the listeners. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you again for having me on. Yeah, what happened was this guy was tripping out, and he basically tipped off all the networks about he had a green golden goose with all these documents, right? And so they set up a meeting for me with all the key players in the industry. At the time, I didn't realize it was going to be a sting kind of situation. So I was a bit reluctant to go anyway, because I had set up my own production company, small production company made up of friends and people that I knew. I had my own accountant, my lawyers. There was a friend of mine who at the time was a law graduate, Lisa. She's from Sweden, but was living in London. And so I had my whole operation in place. And so then this man called Richard Hanna started calling me literally, I don't know, he was calling me about 5 times a day to get me to attend a meeting with the TV networks. And he was like, look, the industry is really corrupt. You've got to, you've got to trust someone. You might as well trust us. We can get your work onto every TV station across the world within, a short record period of time. We've got the budget, we've got the money, etc., etc. And I was like, well, I just want to license my work. And he was like, well, just come to the meeting. And he was like calling me relentlessly. It was like, whoa, man. So anyway, I spoke to people within all the friends that I'd secured to be part of this thing. And Lisa and I agreed that we would attend the meeting together. Now, the thing was that they sent me, this man, Richard Hanna, sent me an email, but at the time, I actually, my internet was down, so I didn't even get the email till after the actual meeting. But anyway, he sent an email for us to recognize him at the station, and I didn't even realize until afterwards that he sent an email with a photograph of somebody that wasn't even him.
Oh, wow.
You know, it was a email of with a photograph of a man who was like very celebrated. He was like a dignitary of some kind, and he was decorated in all these sort of I don't know what you would call it, but anyway, it wasn't him basically. And I discovered that when we returned from the meeting. When we arrived at the place, it was facilities that had just been built because they built this massive broadcasting facilities to, I think it was to launch all the sports shows, so the World Cup, all the boxing shows, all the big sporting events, basically.
Right.
And they lost the deal to Sky. So Sky won the deal, and they had built these facilities on the back of, they were going to, run all these sporting events, but they couldn't do it. So in walks me with this new concept to revolutionize how we bring health and fitness to the mainstream, using dance shows, etc. And basically these documents were stolen, and within no time at all, they had secured deals all around the world. At the time, I was told it was in 126 countries, to basically do exactly that. And that's how Dancing with Stars in the UK, it's called Strictly Come Dancing, but it was a whole plethora of a new genre for bringing dance onto the mainstream and fitness shows, basically.
Oh yeah, and that was huge and still is huge. Dancing with the Stars, and I didn't know this, until I heard about you. But I've been watching this show for years. I thought it was a wonderful show, except for this season. It's really they changed hosts, and it's not as good in my opinion. But the concept is amazing that you came up with.
Yeah, it was basically to marry celebrities with dancers to teach them how to dance, as a form of kind of fitness, really. But anyway, it was, as I said, I had done numerous versions of all the different shows. It was a massive package of this multimedia platform to launch a new genre, which effectively is exactly what they did. And as these deals kicked off, this whole operation was put around me. Number one, to obstruct me from being able to do anything about it, to stop me, basically. I noticed that there were cars outside my house with men sitting in these cars. There was a van that said Carlton Television, which was driving around my area. It was like it was scoping out the street, the neighborhood of where I lived. And I started being followed by white vans, literally everywhere I went, with men in balaclavas, making slit your throat signs at me as I walked past. My mother was terrified. One day I walked with my mother to my brother's house, and we had these vans following us. And I noticed everywhere I went, there was a van outside, and it was the same van that had been outside my house was now following me around. And I couldn't believe what was happening. And then before you knew it, I heard clicks on the phone. We could hear that the phones were being tapped. Our phone calls were being rerouted to these NTL facilities. The company at the time one of the main companies was called NTL that built these broadcasting facilities. And massive deals went down whereby they went from literally a bankrupt company to a multi-billion-pound operation based on the theft of my work, and being obviously franchises being sold in all different countries, in different territories. And so in the background, there was this whole operation around me. Number one, to literally terrorize me. I was receiving death threats down the phone. I had death threats put in my door. I was basically became a targeted individual. That's I didn't know anything about it at that time. I didn't even know the thing existed. But I found myself in a situation where I was literally being hunted. And so I went to the police and reported it. And before you know it, the police officers that were involved were in on it as well. And I did get a phone call to keep my mouth shut and that kind of thing. So I went to different law firms and discovered that they'd closed ranks on me. And so basically anybody that I'd gone to with my case, they basically had paid off to keep their mouths shut because this was huge. The money involved was billions and billions of pounds in every world territory. So one lawyer said, you've got all the evidence, because obviously I had all the paper trail, I had all the contracts, because contracts were signed before I even opened my mouth. When I went to the meeting, I ensured that they signed contracts, but because they didn't perceive me as an opposition of any kind, they obviously did their homework and found out, well, she's a black woman, you know, that is a single parent or whatever. At the time, I was a young mum. And so they just basically went to town. All my computers were hacked to steal even more stuff. Everybody that I went to was trying to steal from me or did steal from me. So eventually what I realized is that I had to take the case on myself, because I had all this evidence and the proof that this was my work. But no lawyers would take it on because it was so big. They said, look, you know, these are giants. There's nothing you can do about it. You've got all the evidence, but, you know, the reality is that these people are going to crush you. If you even try to do anything, they're going to completely crush you. And I just thought, how dare they, you know, how dare these people think, particularly because there was a sacred element to what I had done. It was for the legacy of my brother. How it all came to be was very, it was very spiritual for me. So to think that these parasites could come along and just take my work and do whatever they wanted with it, make themselves rich and terrorize me in order to keep it, just didn't sit well with me at all. And so I basically mounted probably one of the biggest proceedings that had been seen in the UK anyway. And I whooped their ass. They didn't even come to court.
Oh, wow.
They didn't
That's
even
amazing.
come to court. They was, you know, I won straight off the back. And so basically I have the courtroom audios that actually I can give them to you so that the audience can listen to them as well, because the whole thing, the whole journey for me has been supernatural in so many ways. Just to give you a little bit more background into what happened at the time, the case was supposed to be heard in July of 2005. And basically I discovered that they were going to pull off the London bombings. And I went to, when I realized that this was going to happen, because one of the things that they always do is they give you a heads up on what they're going to do. And I had become familiar in my journey of being targeted by them. Most of what was going on was being sort of turned into TV shows. So there was a TV show that was called Hustle, which was launched in 2004. And the main characters in this show, Hustle, were basically based on the very people that had taken me to this facilities in Feltham, the NTL facilities, the same broadcasting company, to pull off this sting. This was turned into a TV show, and I couldn't believe it. And then before I knew it, they had like another girl that they'd given my name, Charlie 7, and they launched it into a pop band. And so the whole journey, they were kind of mocking what I was doing. Like this band was launched with my name, and the album was called A Not So Tragic Cover Up.
My God.
And people went to see her thinking it was me, because my name is not that common. And so when people heard Charlie 7, they just thought it was me. But however, it was these same companies. And this is what they do. They always script it into either a TV show or put it in a magazine. And then later I done my research and found out about Operation Mockingbird, which is a military program, as you probably know yourself, and many of your listeners will know. Yep. And Operation Mockingbird is before an event will take place, they'll script it into a show, and it will go out as if it's just any form of entertainment. But actually what it is they're giving you a heads up of an event that they're going to carry out. It's been done with 9/11. If you go before, in 9/11, years before, there were so many movies that showed that they were going to take down the World Trade Center. There was a movie called Last Kiss Goodnight, and there's a scene where it says you can't take down the towers or whatever. I think if you type in Last Kiss Goodnight and World Trade Center, and then you'll see I think it's been cut into maybe a few minutes clip, but it shows you exactly conversations about taking down the World Trade Center. Now, alongside of my case and my situation, exactly the same thing happened. And for the last 17 years, I've seen this kick off time and time and time and time again. Before every single false flag, they script it into TV shows, and you'll see exactly what happened, or what is professed to going to happen, if that makes sense to you.
Oh yeah, and I know that the Simpsons cartoon show, they have had all kinds of things like that they have scripted into that show well in advance. And 9/11 was was one of those that they wrote in various ways to the show, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
so Simpsons, Family Guy, those are the classical ones they use. But it's usually cartoons. It can be like Charlie Hebdo, for instance. That was another false flag, which took place in 2015. Now, at that particular time, I started working with Alfred Webre, and I was exposing exactly what was going on. And that was when they did Charlie Hebdo. Now, Charlie Hebdo actually means Charlie 7. Hebdo means 7. It means 7 days a week. And I don't know if you remember the event that the false flag that took place in Paris around.
Was that with a bus?
Charlie. Sorry?
Was there something with a bus in Paris?
No, the 7/7 was with a bus, but in France they had a magazine called Charlie Hebdo.
Oh yeah, now I remember. Yep.
And basically that was the same people again. They did it again with Grenfell Tower, which was a big tower in London where they burnt it down in about 15 minutes. And if you look prior to Grenfell Tower, where 2 of my family members were burnt to death in that particular atrocity. That happened in 2017. And it was actually on Trump's birthday. And the Economist magazine, who basically, Economist magazine is deep state. It's part of the intelligence units. And again, with all the events, including this corona situation, they feature it on the front cover of their magazines well in advance of anything happening.
Yes.
And again, with Grenfell Tower, when that tower was burnt down, it was on Trump's birthday, and they had like a tarot card reading on the front cover of The Economist magazine, which depicted Trump. It was Trump, a picture of Trump, well, a cartoon sort of image of Trump. They were all tarot cards, but they had they had the tower card, they had Trump, and I can't remember all the cards, but it was a sequence of a reading, a tarot reading, which was featured. I think it was featured maybe 6 months before this tower
I
went
remember
down.
seeing that. Yep.
That's right. And basically, once again, they showed you well in advance that this tower was going to come down. There was a movie as well in production called Dark Tower, and the main character was called Lord Grenfell. Now, in that particular instance, just before the fire took place of Grenfell Tower, there was an interview with a man called Lord Grenfell. And it was literally minutes before this tower was burnt down, was set alight. And all of that happens because they are showing people clearly evidence. They always give people clues that this is a manufactured, staged event. And the level of atrocity to these people doesn't seem to matter to them. They don't seem to care how far and who suffers, and this is something that has really disturbed me throughout the whole of this whole journey. So on numerous occasions, I've actually, before events have actually happened, I've sounded the alarm, but unfortunately have not been able to stop it in time. There are times when I can see that there's going to be an event and we flag it up and it doesn't happen. But for the most part, I would say most of the false flags that we've seen, all the bombings, shootings that we've seen, they've all been documented well in advance, and it's how this could even be happening to me is just unbelievable.
It's like a sick game that they play, right? And I often wonder, and I got to ask you, Seven, what you think about it. I often wonder how many of us in this realm are actually humans and how many are something else, because there seems to be a large amount of people who you just can't get through to them because they've either been brainwashed or they're just not that bright or conscious. And then you've got these psychopaths running things, right? They're running the big banks and the politicians, they're front people and all that. Are they even human beings? And what are they? I wonder that all the time.
Well, I mean, I think anybody with any, particularly the awakened people that are seeing all this play out, you have to come to the question, what is this? What is this? What kind of individual will be compelled to do exactly what they're doing? And I'm of the mindset, I mean, I know lots of people talk about reptilians, and I work with Alfred, who has advanced knowledge in that area, but I'm of the mindset that this is demonic possession. Mm-hmm. Absolute demonic possession. These people are absolutely taken over. They're taken over. I mean, the whole COVID situation, the company NTL in 2006, after I won the case, they disbanded and became Virgin Media. Virgin Media. Many people will know Richard Branson, and it's right. Funny because people are flagging up Fauci, they're flagging up Bill Gates, rightly so, in regards to this whole COVID fiasco, scandemic. But many people are not aware of the Virgin Media side of things, because in the UK, they have taken over the National Health Service. I think it was in 2015, there were deals with Lockheed Martin to take over the National Health Service, the NHS. And that is who are running the whole of the operations behind COVID right now. It's the same people.
So crazy.
Well,
Seven, we're up against the break once again, so hold that thought. We're going to come back to that, and we need to explore that a little bit more. And we're really enjoying hearing all of your insight into this, and it's an amazing thing. You're listening to Inside the Matrix with our special guest, Seven. We'll be back in just a little bit, so please stick around with us. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Inside the Matrix for our final segment with our special guest, Seven. And before the break, we were getting into some more interesting info, and we're trying to determine what in the heck is motivating these psychopaths that seem to be running everything around here. And I agree with you. I think there is a lot of, let's say, discarnate entities, evil spirits, whatever you want to call them, that find their way into inhabiting and taking over human bodies. And you see this, and even some celebrities have talked about, like Beyonce talks about her alter ego, Sasha Fierce, that takes over when she performs or whatever. I mean, a lot of these famous people, entertainers specifically, talk about having these entities that are within them. And a lot of people think, oh, that's crazy talk, or whatever. And but I don't think so. I think it's quite real. And now, how they got to be in those frequencies that they inhabit, and they can't come into a physical body or be born into a physical body, I don't know why that is, except for maybe they've been banned from this realm at some point, and now they try and get in. And as soon as somebody signs in the dotted line to these systems, they really open themselves up to be taken over. That's right. And the other thing is that we know with a lot of the rituals that these people do, part of it is to switch off the emotional body and to disconnect from having any empathy or compassion or concern for the people whose lives they are destroying right now. And when you switch off the heart, you make yourself a host for anything and everything that is demonic. And this is what we're up against. We're up against people who no longer have the capacity to look at their brothers and sisters and gauge the level of suffering that they're causing to other human beings. And so it becomes the responsibility of those of us who are awake and who can see, who have experienced in one way or another the foul side of these people, to step it up. And that's what we're doing. We've just done an indictment hearing with a number of different nations across the world. It was huge, actually. I was one of the judges, myself and Alfred Webre. You can actually go to peaceinspace.org and you will be able to have a look at the indictments. But what we're talking about is crimes against humanity of the most horrific order. I just spoke to someone yesterday, and I was talking to a man in the local shop, and one of his customers told him this story yesterday about his mother. His mother had a cough. So given this whole COVID, climate that we're living in, he thought the wisest thing to do would be to take his mother to actually see a doctor, right? So he takes her to the hospital, and they say to him, leave her with us tonight. We'll observe her over the next 24 hours and, we'll let you know. So he goes back the following day to see how his mum's doing. And lo and behold, they told him that his mother was dead. And he was like, God. She's dead? She had a cough. How could she be dead? So he said, I want to see her. Where is she? So anyway, they took him to the mortuary, where they pulled out the tray with his mother was in one of those zipped up kind of body bags.
and she was alive. She was in the bag, breathing.
Oh my God.
And basically, he unzipped the bag, took his mother out, and brought her home.
Oh my God.
This
These
is what's
people
going
are
on.
sick.
They're actually, I mean, for them to be putting her in a body bag awake, they must be burning these people alive. I mean, why would they put her in there alive?
Unbelievable.
This is what
Unbelievable.
is
These people
going
can do
on.
that. Yeah.
This is what is going on. There is a very sort of satanic, ritualistic side to this whole COVID situation. We've seen all the mocking that's been done by these nurses, right, on TikTok. And there's actually been even, I remember there was kind of a skit of these nurses were carrying a body in the body bag alive with its legs kicking on TikTok. And this was kind of like a joke type of thing. And then as we hear these stories coming out, we realize that this is actually, they're showing you that this is what they're doing. Because this is the ultimate, we have power, you don't have power, ha, 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 ha. They're laughing in everybody's faces. And the reality is, until people collectively recognize that these people don't have power, we put these people in positions of power.
Yeah, we cooperate with them and give them power when we should.
That's right. But the average person that goes around wearing a mask is acquiescing with their own demise, and they don't realize it. This is a whole Truman Show, reality show situation kicking off here. And
Absolutely.
Most people that are wearing the mask don't realize that they're part of a reality show. It's a show. It's absolutely twisted and it's sick, but it's absolutely a reality TV show. Mm-hmm. It's basically, we have these people that are on the mainstream television giving us all these fake numbers, which they're making up by the day, pretending that all of these people are dying in order to usher people in to get this vaccine. That's the end goal, to be able to ensure that they can literally vaccinate and massacre as many people as possible, and us be complicit with that. Because the whole time, just as we spoke about Operation Mockingbird in the last segment, at the whole duration of this situation with COVID, they've showed people all along that it's a lie. They've produced evidence after evidence. They've left clues after clues on the government's website. Up until today, they've got it listed that coronavirus is a non-contagious, non-high infectious disease. That is on the British government's website. They've recently done a Freedom of Information Act request to the Department of Health in the British government, and they've asked them, please produce, let's say it this way, please produce the scientific data that proves that this thing, COVID, actually exists.
Well, they've never isolated any virus.
That's right.
And the CDC website proves it. And Dr. Andrew Kaufman, who was on the show months ago when a lot of this first came out, we talked about that. And we also talked about these RT-PCR tests, which do not measure any kind of virus, first of all. And what they actually do is they measure the amount of exosomes or RNA material that your body produces with an immune response. So theoretically, nearly everybody should test positive for having some kind of immune response, because we've all had colds, we've all had allergies or whatever that our bodies have fought off. And our bodies create this RNA material, including viruses, when we are fighting off something. So the whole thing is an entire scam, and they use the so-called positive tests to scare the hell out of everybody, thinking that there's this horrible thing going on. But if you look at the actual number of deaths, like somebody pointed out, at the end of October, there were a little over 2 million deaths nationwide from every single cause in the United States. Typically, in a typical year, 2.8 million people die of all causes in the United States every year. So we're well under that if we keep going the way we've been going. So where is this incredible pandemic that, they keep talking about? It's all a scam.
It's all a scam. As this friend of mine, Lawrence, he described it so perfectly. He said this: instead of law enforcement, we have lie enforcement.
Exactly.
So they've replaced law with the lie. So we have lie enforcement, and they're getting all these people to comply with the lie. We have lie enforcement officers that are dressed up in costumes, going around forcing people to comply with the lie. That's exactly what's going on right now. And you see, the thing is, we are a dot away from Nazi Germany if we allow these people the fullness of the plan, the scam that they intend to carry out, which the end game is obviously to vaccinate everybody. Now, once people recognize that the people who are behind this, for instance, as I said, the people behind my case, they're behind all the false flag terror operations that have kicked off since 2003. There's a report that people can have a look at, which is called the Farrell Report. .net, thefarrellreport.net, and it's FARRELL report.net, and okay. that report tells you exactly who is behind these false flag terror operations and the scam against me and God knows how many other people. The reality is the criminals, the terrorists, are actually incriminating the innocent members of the public with the treatment that they themselves should be being given right now. So they're putting people under house arrest when in fact they should be under house arrest. And all of the things that we should be enforcing as an awakened humanity against them, they're actually carrying it out to the innocent members of the public, because the innocent members of the public have completely given away their power and their rights. And so many of us have come together and issued these indictments. I know that a lot of people are active right now across the world. There are lots of lawyers and doctors that are mobilizing to take these people out in one way or another. The issue to me is about enforcement. That seems to be the stumbling block in terms of how we deal with this. So there's a number of things that we can do. Obviously, people are protesting. We know that people are protesting all across the world. We know that Denmark recently overturned the plan to vaccinate them by protesting for 9 days straight, I believe.
Oh, that was great with the pots and pans. Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
So we've had the Danish people, mobilize and over the period of 9 days take up their pots and pans. Now, we've seen this before in Iceland, because in 2010,
yes.
Was it 2008, or it could be between 2008 and 2010 anyway, that the Icelandic people during the swine flu epidemic, so-called, or plandemic, that was the one before this. I think the swine flu, they intended to do what they're doing now with the swine flu situation, but it didn't quite work out, right?
Right. It was the first trial run, huh?
Yeah, that's right. And there is actually a report. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called World at Risk, which was put together about 2005. And it talks about a planned training exercise drill, which is exactly what we're experiencing right now. So there's a number of reports. I know that you probably know about the Lockstep report, which was
from 2010. Yeah.
Yeah, but this particular report was in 2005, and it outlines exactly what we are experiencing right now. And so, the reality is there's enough evidence and information of the falsified death certificates, all of these new bills and acts, Coronavirus Act in the UK, I think it's Coronavirus Bill in the US, all of these things provide us with evidence to take on one of the biggest cases we've ever seen as far as criminality and treasonous crimes against humanity. And what we need at this point is for everybody to support these actions that are currently underway. Now, we have the actual report. I think I sent it to you in regards to the indictments. And I really urge everybody to go on to the peaceinspace.org website and get a copy of the indictments and share it with everybody so that that this is happening. There are doctors involved, nurses involved. Nurse Kate Shemirani is involved in that. Mark Steele, he's a 5G expert. We haven't even touched on 5G, I know.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole nother can of worms, right?
That exactly. And again, it's the same people. It's the same people. And so what we need to do, because what we're seeing is the last kick of a dying horse. They know their time is finished. They know their time is up. And it's for us to mobilize to literally remove them, because that's the only thing that is going to work, is for us to take these people out of our positions of power. They don't have any rights. There's something called ultra-virus. Do you know about ultra-virus?
No.
Okay. Ultra-virus is basically a law which says they have gone beyond the scope of powers. Basically, we know that effectively they are not a government. They are a corporation of self-appointed people with self-interests right now. They're not a government that is representing any of the people. I'm not going to get into the Biden-Trump situation because, I don't have any dog in that race, to be honest with you. I know that there are a lot of people that are gunning for Trump right now and believe that Trump is one of the good guys in this whole situation, and that the whole thing with Biden was a sting, and that Biden will not claim the position of president. If he does, I can't even begin to think what will happen, not only to the American people, but the rest of the world if right. Biden gets announced as the president. But I think the whole two-party situation, regardless of where you are in the world, is a really outdated model as far as us being able to govern our affairs as sentient beings on this planet. We have enough technologies like the blockchain to be able to, create cooperatives and, on community basis, self-governing, situations now. We don't need governments, centralized governments, in the same way that we've had them. They don't work. They haven't worked. They've only been put there to ensure that the same people come in again and again and again and again.
Exactly.
And their time is finished, really. I know that people are gunning for Trump, but I really think even though people are gunning for Trump, people have to start to recognize that Trump is just one man. And collectively, we have together more power than Trump could ever have.
Right.
If people will start to mobilize and become effective in fighting for their own survival and their own freedoms. There are so many things we can do. We have a hashtag. If everybody wants to join in the hashtag, get them out. Hashtag get them out. Hashtag
that's
get
a good one.
Criminals out.
Yeah.
Get the criminals out. If we, the Me Too movement created the hashtag Me Too. And it wasn't, we haven't exactly removed all the people from the entertainment industry, but it at least put things on the map. We got Harvey Weinstein by the Me Too movement and that hashtag. And if everybody was to start using the hashtag Get the Criminals Out, that would have immense ramifications. Because basically they believe that they've duped everybody and people are too stupid to work out what's going on. If everybody was to start hashtagging Get Them Out, it would send the message to them that it's over. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, so I think that's a great idea.
As well, if everybody was to hashtag Get the Criminals Out and attach the link with the indictments, that would send massive ricochets and ramifications throughout the halls of corruption right now. Because the reality is they know that we know, but they think it's too small a portion of humanity that knows. So we need to send the message to them. As much as we need people on the streets, we need to take to social media by storm, because that's what we have to our one of the tools that we can use. We Absolutely. Have immense spiritual powers, the power of prayer. That's important for people to use at this time. You know, I have on my Facebook page, which is 7 Starseed, I have done a kind of very short instructional video whereby people can make their own I do not consent video. It's a very short video. It basically, we've broke it down with some bullet points that you do not consent to being given viruses. You do not consent to being vaccinated. You do not consent to being controlled by criminals. We do not consent to false flags. I mean, we do not consent to any of it. And so if people was to make a video saying I do not consent with the hashtag Get the Criminals Out, imagine if millions of people did that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, just like the walk away hashtag, people were making videos about how they walked away from the Democrat Party here in the States. The same thing. Yeah, the same concept. I think that's a great idea.
That's right. And if everybody listening and everybody who was awakened was to take one of those hashtags, Get Them Out, attach a I do not consent video. It could be with your smartphone. You know, it doesn't have to be an edited video. It just needs to be something simple. You could do it with your children, with your family, all together in a room screaming, I do not consent, and hashtag Get the Criminals Out. We would turn this around overnight. So, you know, for anybody want to keep sort of follow up with me, you can go to 7 Starseed on Facebook. I do have a YouTube channel, but I've had a number of strikes. And so I don't know, I haven't been posting on there recently, but you can at least watch some of my videos, which is Solutionaries Media Network, SOULUTIO, SOULUTIONARIES Media Network. Solutionaries, like soul music. Yeah. Solutionaries Media Network, and that's on
wonderful.
YouTube and Twitter.
Thank you so much, 7. This has been awesome having you on the show. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom with us. We hope to have you on again soon. So thank you so much. Everybody out there, we'll see you next time inside the Matrix.
This is Inside the Matrix, hosted by Jimmy Brent.
Who are we talking about?
Jimmy Brent. Live every Sunday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
It is worldwide.
Broadcasting from an undisclosed location deep within the neon capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. For more information on the host and the show, please visit InsideTheMatrix.org. That's InsideTheMatrix.org. It's time to break the chains of manipulated consciousness and claim our true nature as creative divine beings. Inside the Matrix. Inside the Matrix.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.